is I see that the way I use technology is just a tool to me. It's just a tool. It's a means to doing things in a much easier way for me. But you use it in a completely different way to me.
I like technology, but I don't like using technology. So if you merge with technology, you're suddenly not using it, you are technology. So I prefer to become technology other than use it as a tool.
Welcome to CrossBorder Conversations. This is a STIR original video series that features talks between thought leaders across countries and across creative disciplines. Our speakers today have a color connect with them, albeit with a difference. Morag Myerscough. She's a London-based artist whose work is characterized by an engaging boldness. Born and raised in North London, she comes from a very creative and eclectic family. Her Scottish mum was a textile artist, and her dad was a viola player and played for the Beatles, the White Album, and also with great likes Bob Marley, Elton John, and many more. Her great-granddad had escaped from his London home to join the circus in Europe as a clown. There he met his wife, who had also run away to the circus from a good German home, and she was a high diver. So with this creative lineage, Morag is inspired from a very young age. She loved sewing as a young girl and belonged to the Young Embroiderers Society from age 8, had a piece of work in the Embroiderers Guild exhibition at the UK Design Museum when she was 12, and joined the Royal College of Arts to pursue a career as an artist thereafter. Loving the Memphis approach, she went to Milan to work with Michele Ducchi in 1990. Morag enjoys creating specific local responses to each distinct audience that will see and experience the work, using it to create community and build identity. She connects memory with her work, with the people, with the places, creating a space of belonging. The eclectic breadth of her work includes cafes, children's hospitals, and temporary and permanent installations. And her style has evolved to be so unique that one may just see her work and say, oh, that's definitely a Morag. She believes that one evolves as a person through their years of childhood and experiences, and that all things happen for a reason. Welcome, Morag.
And thank you. That was amazing. Very exciting.
Neil Harbisson. Neil is a New York-based, Spanish-born, British-Irish cyborg artist and activist. He is known for being the world's first cyborg or the world's first cyborg artist. He has an antenna implanted in his skull and for being legally recognized as a cyborg by a government. Neil was born colorblind, and with the antenna, which he considers a part of his body, by sending audible vibrations through his skull, is able to recognize color. In 2010, he founded the Cyborg Foundation with his childhood friend and cyborg artist Moon Ribas, and as an international organization that defends cyborg rights, promotes cyborg art, and supports people who want to become cyborgs. In 2017, he founded the Trans Species Society, an association that gives voice to people with non-human identity. So besides an antenna, Neil has a compass implanted in the back of his knee to see if he could awake the sense of north. His Wi-Fi enabled antenna also allows him to receive signals and data from satellites. He also installed a transdental communication system in his mouth, the Bluetooth tooth, which vibrates as he communicates in Morse code with his partner, Moon Ribas, who has also installed one. He aims to take Albert Einstein's theory of time relativity into practice by creating time illusions, and has executed the world's first skull-transmitted painting in the city of New York. Neil, we would love to hear more about this in the conversation that comes. So on this colorful note, I leave the stage to Morag and Neil. We're leaving the two of you. Hopefully you have your beers or coffees in hand. I think it's a bit early for beers, but maybe your coffees in hand or whatever you want with you. And let's pretend you are in a cafe and you'll have just met.
Hello, Neil.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got to go in full conversation. So I'm interested, just to begin with, Does your antenna work? Can you see the color on the screen through, sound and things?
If I focus the antenna towards the screen, then I can hear the colors. But it picks up the dominant. Now I'm listening to the color up here, but it picks up the dominant frequency of the color around me.
Okay.
So the dominant vibration of the color, and then I hear that color. But then the dominant color keeps changing because, it's never the same. So if I want to perceive a specific color, I need to get closer.
Okay.
But it's I hear the sound or the note of the frequency of the color. So red is the lowest, and then orange goes a bit higher, yellow, up to violet. And actually goes ultraviolet as well, and infrared.
Yeah. I'm just fascinated to understand when, because I watched your TED talk and I understood how you get the sound, and then so with the clothes you're wearing, what color you're wearing from identifying that from the sound that you've identified visually, and that you can see color in your sleep. Because if you've never ever seen yellow, did somebody describe yellow to you?
To me, color is not a visual element. To me, color is a vibration that exists, that bounces everywhere, and I receive this vibration through the antenna and through sound, but it's not visual. So I never imagine color visually. It's more of a movement, a vibration, and a sound. And that's
so it's like listening to music, but then without it's quite hard to get your head around, isn't it? It's quite hard to understand.
Yeah, so I never say that I see color through the antenna. I say that I perceive color through the antenna, because I perceive color. But color to me is not a visual element. It's a vibration. And in my case, I feel the vibration, because it's also, especially the high frequency colors, I can feel the vibration in the bone and also hear it. And the lower colors are more sound than feeling. But I can feel through the vibrations in the bone.
So I did this project where I wrote my colored tweets down each day. So I wrote each morning. It was really hard. I did it for 2 years. Each morning I wrote a color that I thought I felt. And then in the evening, I'd write the color that I felt again, whatever time. So I might wait. If I was super happy, pink was like my very happy color. And then sort of olive green was my
neutral,
middling color, not really, sort of nothing, a bit mossy. And then obviously, so like dark colors, they were a bit more depressive colors. So with your frequency, is it mood evoking then?
Well, I've never associated color with feelings or mood or culturally. I've never associated color with all its culture. But since I hear color, I have associated my own cultural relationship between feelings and color. For example, red for me is very peaceful. It's a peaceful color because it's the lowest frequency. It's a color that doesn't annoy me very much because it's relaxing. It's actually a very peaceful color. Whereas violet can be aggressive and high. It's high pitch, high vibration. It's very intense violet. So I would associate violet with passion or violence. And green is neutral. It's in the middle. It's not high frequency. It's not low frequency. It's right in the middle. So I would associate green with being very neutral. And then orange, very human, because humans create a lot of orange frequencies, like brown is orange as well. So orange is to do with animals, with humans, and yellow is food usually. The vibration of yellow is usually related to things that we eat, and blue is not what we eat. So blue vibrations is never eaten usually. So I associate with objects or with, usually objects, blue or sky, obviously. That's interesting. You did this. You woke up and you would see a color and then you would tweet the color, or you would feel.
Yeah, I think of how I felt that day, and then I would choose the color that would suit the mood that I was feeling at the time. And then, I mean, obviously in a day you feel many moods. Yeah. And it isn't just one in the morning, one at night, but that was the restriction that I gave myself. But because the thing is, everybody talks to me because I use color and I work in hospitals, and I work with, different people's ability on seeing and other abilities or disability. People say to me, well, do you use lots of color theories that are existing? And actually I don't, because I think that it's interesting, that thing about red, because with autism, I was told when I was working on a project that you must never put red anywhere, and you have to put greens and other, it has to be greens and violets and those sorts of colors. But I don't think everybody perceives red in the way somebody has written down somewhere that red should be perceived, which is exactly what you're saying. And so I think a color is there for interpretation by so many people it's almost impossible to I would say to say that this is for this and that is for that and this is for this. And I've also proved in hospitals that actually you can introduce orange, you can introduce red, you can introduce those colors, because it depends on how you use them as well, and how people respond to them. If you had a fully orange room from the top to the bottom to the sides to the floor, like a completely encased orange room, I would say emotionally that would affect you quite a lot. But if you introduce orange within other colors or whatever, it's not going to, it might not necessarily, you might not even notice it. So I think, I found that, I think that's fascinating. There's a way you describe the colors are a way a lot of those colors are seen as well, which is interesting.
Yellow, I think, is very delicate as well, because it only exists in a very small space. If you move it a bit, it's orange, and if you move it a bit, it's lime. So it's a color that doesn't have much space, whereas blue has a lot of space. There's many shades of blue and shades of turquoise, which has blue. But then yellow, I find, is maybe a very delicate color that only exists temporarily, and then. But that's how I've experienced it.
And I think it's important to understand how different people experience it. Because Kandinsky with the Bauhaus, he had the red, blue and yellow. And I think he believed yellow was very active. And he also put the shapes that were, I'm not very good on references, so somebody will probably tell me I got it wrong. But, there were people put their own relationship to color, to shapes, to things. And I think that I don't actually agree that it should all be a unified understand. When people ask me, give color theory, give this, and I was just like, no, I do my colors instinctively, purely instinctively. And I respond to the light in the space how the place is being used, that sort of thing, not necessarily about I read in a book that red means this and blue means that,
Yeah.
Neil, I believe you did this thing in New York where you did something at the Times Square where I think there were a group of people painting at one point and you were like 10 blocks away and then you were trying to figure out the colors and stuff. Can you tell us a bit about that?
My antenna has internet connection, so I don't need to sense the colors in front of me or around me. I can connect my antenna to a different sensor and then I could now be sensing colors that are somewhere else. So I wanted to see if we could we had a white painting at Times Square, and then I was on stage somewhere else in New York with a white canvas as well. And then passerbys in New York Times started painting color stripes on the canvas. And then there was a sensor sending the vibrations of the color to my head. So then I was on stage painting the same colors that I was sensing. So the two paintings were being painted at the same time. And I was receiving the colors live on stage. And then we wanted to explore, we called it the skull transmitted painting or something like this. Yeah, because the colors were being transmitted live to my head and then I was painting the colors that I was sensing. And then the paintings were almost exactly the same. There was a bit of a problem with the orange because I sensed the orange red, but it was orange. So I painted a stripe was orange, but the rest was exactly the same.
But so when you separated all the colors out, when you understood the colors, but you don't see the colors, it's very hard. I can't quite understand. You don't see it. But then color doesn't exist, does it? So, it's all in our
brain,
in our minds.
Neil, you also we've read somewhere that you listen to architectural structures, and you did something, the works of Antonio Gaudí, the Catalan architect. He's also a fellow Spanishman. All the spaces in his buildings have interesting areas and stuff, and they're very musical. So how does that relate in architectural structures? And maybe Morag, you can talk about a bit about how you're playing with color in architectural structures as well.
I mean, color is not only on paintings, color is everywhere. So in the case of architecture, it has changed the way I sense cities because walking around the streets allows me to hear different melodies. Each street has its own melody, and Gaudí is extremely colorful. It has some of his architecture is very colorful. So it's it's exciting to hear some of his architecture. Also, churches, the glasses in churches can be very musical sometimes. So, yeah, the antenna now allows me to hear buildings or hear the sound of streets and buildings, and it has changed the way I perceive or sense architecture in general. Yeah, each city, like walking around, like Iceland has very different colored houses, so it has melodies. Or an island in Venice called Burano, it's extremely colorful. Also, it has so many different melodies that it makes me see architecture differently.
Well, with my work, it's I sort of see my work almost, because a lot of it is temporary. It started off the physical, the big installations were very temporary. So, and I often put into very sort of harsh concrete spaces or whatever. And so I always sort of see my installations as flowers growing up as colors of, coming out for a short period of time and then disappearing. But I feel very much about, I think it's all important about the fact that my work is hand painted, the materiality, because the colors, for me, it's about the purity of the colors as well. It's not just about a digitally printed piece of material or something. It's the fact that I layer colors, like 5 or 6 coats that give a different depth to the color, and also how the light responds to the artwork. So, and I just love this sort of incredibly intense, colourful piece of work appearing in this space that is usually surrounded by concrete or grey, and it's just fascinating to see how people respond to it as well. So I think it's the energy for me that colour gives, which is what you're saying from sound, really. It does give this incredible energy that I think there's too much of the built environment that has been has been controlled by people who don't want colour. And you know, and it's not joyful enough, it's too serious. And people often say too many, you know, bright things, bright and colourful are for children, and I do not believe in that at all. Why do children just have to have colour?
Because I had a greyscale childhood, and it was not sad. Many people assume that if you don't see color, life is sad, and it's not. It was never my case. I had a very happy childhood without seeing any color, but I was curious about color because everyone kept mentioning it every day. So I wanted to sense color because I know it exists and it surrounds me, so I was interested in it, but I didn't want to sense color because my life was sad, which is what some people assume. Gray can actually have many different shades, basically. It hasn't made me happier, which is what people associate color with happiness. It's more interesting, but not necessarily happier, I think.
I think happy is a bad word. I think joyful, because for me, flat plants, seeing plants and flowers and things like and nature, you know, that is joyful. Happy is
I enjoy flowers, their shape and their smell. The color is just a complement. It's not necessarily the part of it that makes me feel happier. No, I don't think I associate color with joy and happiness. I associate it with an interest and in a cultural, especially cultural aspect of society that I've never been able to ignore, because people keep mentioning color in every conversation, in every book, every 2 pages there's a color. You keep seeing mentions of color. So to me, it's more of a social aspect, and hearing color allows me to understand society a bit more, but it's not something that personally makes me feel happier or any joy, I think. No.
So something that is like a pale pink becomes a purple because your eye is responding to the neon and can't quite deal with the other colors around it. So I quite like that, but I haven't done Invisible, but I think the thing that fascinates me is how colors respond to each other a lot, and then how we respond to those colors and how difficult it is. It's very difficult. People think colors are easy often, and it's really hard work.
Well, I would ask for a silent ceiling, so that the ceiling is not noisy, so that if I want to go to bed, I have a silent ceiling, so I guess no color in the ceiling. I would also ask maybe the floor to have a low frequency, low vibration. Maybe the living room should sound in a major chord, so that it feels like a harmony. So major chord, maybe C major or G major. Then in the kitchen, it would be good to have a high frequency, because then it would keep me alert in the kitchen. So high vibration, maybe a violet, because violet doesn't interfere with food as well. We don't usually eat violet, so it wouldn't create interference with the frequencies of food. And maybe in the shower or in the bathroom, there could be some melodies, like songs, different colors that create melodies or songs on the walls. And maybe the exit door, green, because green is neutral. It's like tuning fork. Like when you tune an orchestra, you use green, A, and it tunes yourself before you go out in the street. So it's like tuning yourself. That would be my brief, but then I would be open to any suggestions.
I think it's that idea of also calmness and living with something continually. So my house has always been completely white, all the rooms white, except for my bedroom, which is dark grey, because my partner, he didn't like the noise of everything. So I just made this room completely dark grey with felt curtains, so everything is very, very calm, and then you just sleep, and you sleep much longer, and it is really, really great. And I think there is a problem in a similar sense, when you visualize things, that they can be too, you know, if I woke up in the middle of the night, or I made you a bedroom that was fluorescent yellow or something in the middle of the night, you'd be like, ah! You know, I don't think you'd want that sort of thing. So I think there's a place for everything. Whereas at the moment I'm doing a summer room, and I'm really struggling, because I am doing installations outside, and a different sort of public response, and a different sort of thing, that different messages you're getting is very, very different to putting colour in intimate spaces where you are seeing it every day. Your different moods are responding to it. My dad played very modernist 60s British composers, 60s music in quartets. And when we were very small, we used to go to listen to my father. It was very advanced music for a 5-year-old or something. And, you know, we used to go and listen. And even though the majority of the time we were just trying to keep still so we didn't get told off, with osmosis, no, you know, that music was always around our house. You know, my father practiced continually. If you're a viola player or any instrument, you have to practice all the time. So being sort of, so listening to that music all the time, I sort of understood it's another level. You know, I work on a visual level, and my father worked on a sound level, which is, you know, and that's a whole different process, isn't it? Because it isn't a thing in front of you. So even though I can't play an instrument, and I can't speak French, and I'm rubbish at all those things, there is something that I know that has been that I've that I understand. Like when I was at the Royal College, I was obsessed with opera, and all my work I did the sets for The Turn of the Screw by Benjamin Britten, and Benjamin Britten's quite hard work to listen to as well. So I haven't connected to music so much in recent years, but definitely earlier on, everything I did was connected in some form or another to sound. Probably less with colour at that point. more typographically, more responsively, in a different way. So I think they are because it's different ways of seeing things, isn't it? And not seeing something is a higher level really of understanding than seeing something, I think. I don't know, it seems.
When were you introduced to color? I mean, Morag, for you, and Neil, when did you feel you wanted to experience what everyone was talking about? When was that moment in your life?
I noticed that I had some issue with color when I was 4, maybe, or 5, because children at my school were faster at picking the colors up and painting or drawing. And so I noticed that I had some issue with colors. So we went to the doctor and I was diagnosed with daltonism, it's called here. It's color blindness, but not achromatism yet. So until I was 11, I thought I was colorblind, so that I was confusing some colors. And then when I was 11, they noticed that I had issue with not only red and green or two colors, but all of them. So then I did another test, and then they realized it was not the normal color blindness, but achromatism, which is basically that you only see one monochrome, basically. And then from the age of 11, I started to become very curious about what color was, because I thought I had been seeing color, but I couldn't differentiate it. But then suddenly I realized that I had never seen color, and that I have no idea, and still have no idea what color is visually. Because even if you try to explain very carefully what color is, I don't think I can understand what you see. So it became an obsession from the age of 11 in trying to understand what color is. And I read theories and I asked people what color is. And then I had a kind of idea, and I realized that nobody really knows what color is. Everyone has its own definition of color, and it's very, very complex.
Yeah.
And I was interested in sensing it in my own way, not necessarily through my eyes, because I wanted to have an independent organ for color without influencing my existing senses. And then I thought through vibrations in the bone would be a good way. And then these vibrations also become audible. So it allows me to feel and hear the vibrations of color.
So can you switch it off at all? Does it irritate you sometimes?
I can block it. So if I cover it, like blocking your eyes or your ears.
Yeah, so if you were in a room that was just driving you insane,
yeah,
you go, like probably one of my artworks, it'd be like, oh, okay, let's cover it up.
Sometimes, like supermarkets are very noisy. Supermarkets are very, very colorful.
Yeah. With me, with color, it was, I think it was about being filled with a house with music, but also my mother was a textile artist, and my mother, and that was really interesting. Where we'd collect onions, and she would dye fabrics and wool and stuff, and you could really is the real nuances where you will have in sound, and I have in the difference between a piece of wool dyed by a vegetable dye and a piece of wool dyed by a chemical dye, and I was shown that from really, really young about those differences. So it's a bit like, learning about wine or whatever, I don't know, indirectly, my mum wasn't teaching us or telling us those things, but because I was being exposed to those things all the time, again, I was interested in it. And actually textiles was the area that I was interested the most in as a child. And sort of, I've gone a bit of a full circle, and really what I do is it's not textiles, but it has a pattern use of colors and stuff. So I think what you experience when you're as a child, as I often say, is you follow that through much more in your life than you'd ever imagine, because it's such a short time of experience sometimes of certain things. And I think that is when it started embedding in me, and I've just always been fascinated by it as well, wanted to use it.
I wanted to ask you both also, on technology. So Neil, you got technology embedded within you. Morag, do you use any kind of technology at all? How do both of you adapt to changes in technology? If so, how does it affect the body, the mind, the being?
I build a lot of my stuff on the computer, so I use technology in that way, but I don't necessarily, but I do a thing where I concentrate on how I build the thing, and then I like coming off it and then making things by hand, and then the whole thing is by hand. So I have I like working in different ways and not just working in one way. But I'm nothing, not like, mine is, I see that the way I use technology is just a tool to me. It's just a tool. It's not physically, it's not changing necessarily. It's a means to doing things in a much easier way for me. But you use it in a completely different way to me.
Yeah, I like technology, but I don't like using technology. So if you merge with technology, you're suddenly not using it, you are technology. So I prefer to become technology other than use it as a tool. So that's why I had this compass implanted in my knee to sense the magnetic north. So the aim is not technology, the aim is to sense natural elements that I cannot sense. Like the magnetic north is an element that many animals can sense, but that we humans don't feel. We don't feel the magnetic north. So this was an experiment to feel this. The other project is this crown that allows me to feel the passage of time. So it's a point of heat that takes 24 hours to go around the head. So the prototype is finished, but it's still not implanted, but it will allow me to feel the rotation of the earth. I like creating new senses, and technology is a way of creating new senses, but if I could create them by genetically modifying my genes, I would do it through genetic modification. My focus is not technology. Technology, I see just as a medium to create these organs or senses.
Do you think that if you hadn't had the color, your lack of color or whatever, you would have gone down the same route? Or do you think it is absolutely a response?
Well, I'm a pianist, so I chose the piano because it's black and white. So I would have continued playing the piano, and probably I would have painted in grayscale. I would have created a grayscale world. I would have focused on what I see and what I sense, and I would have probably still created a connection between the piano and the grayscale world that I sense. Grayscale, gray food, gray. I would have done everything gray. My house would be completely colorless. I wouldn't allow any colors in my house. That was what I was focusing on when I was a teenager, that I would live in a colorless world. I was thinking of living up in the north where there's snow, so that in snow, if there's snow, there's usually not much color, so it would be a colorless space. But then suddenly this happened, and I did a complete change, and I started focusing on color in a very different way. But I don't know. I might still go back to explore the gray.
Say, for example, if you have all those things and you're not able to switch them off, do you think you'd go really crazy after a while? Thing going back, for a certain period of time, it's a bit like you saying about the sound with the colors, but then actually, because the thing is, I don't get bored of color. But there's obviously some form of, that. Do you not think if you have all these things all the time, that you will get fed up with it after a while, with certain things?
Yes, I will. But the reason why I created this was because I get bored very easily. Yes, I get bored very, very easily. And that's why I create new senses, because reality and the repetition of reality, it kind of maybe depresses.
But if it was genetic, though, you wouldn't be able to switch it off in the same way, would you?
No, I don't think I would I don't think of switching off. I think of maybe upgrading the senses. If I get bored with the same colors, then what I've been doing with colors, I started with 25. I got bored with the 25 after a year. Then I added, I went to 42. Then it kept upgrading to 360 different microtones. Then I got bored with the 360, so then I included infrared and ultraviolet. Then it became normal again. So when sensing the world becomes normal, I don't like this. And then when this happened, then I added the internet connection so that people could start sending colors to my head. And now I'm in a stage where everything has become normal again. So I'm trying to think what is next, whether to go beyond the ultraviolets and infrareds or explore the gray area that I haven't explored in depth. But that wouldn't mean that I would cut off the antenna. I would still have the antenna, but then I would focus on exploring gray and then I don't think there should be a switch, because then the brain would assume that it's not a sense, but a tool. And I think if you merge with a new sensory input, it needs to be continuous so that the brain accepts it like an eye or an ear. Slowly the brain learns to disconnect. So if now I'm focusing on hearing you, and I'm focusing on hearing, not on balance or on smell, and I'm not focusing on color now, and the brain learns to
separate.
Yeah, or to focus on different senses, even if you add new ones.
Do you work with groups of people or anything, Neil?
Yeah, I've done some projects where with a choir, for example, a children's choir. So they learned the sound of each color and then they sang colors, or with musicians as well, with quartets. They learn the colors, and then in the performance, there's colors on stage and they play the colors that are on stage. So it's also been much more interesting than I thought. It was nice, really nice. But I've only done it in a few occasions. Yeah, with choirs.
What I tend to do is on my projects on the outside, the colors, the neon is the thing that makes a response, but on the inside, say for example my project the Temple of Agape, I didn't put any color, it was just a natural material, and then I let the light come in to make the shape and make the color, and actually it was a quiet space and it didn't have light, was from the color was from light, not from pre-painted spaces or whatever. So, I mean, I'm always playing, it was that thing I was talking to you about earlier about external spaces and internal spaces. They are very different to me because light is very different in those spaces and how you can control them in those spaces as well. Because if you're doing an installation that's outside, you've got daylight, because I don't work in galleries usually. So my external pieces of work will respond during the day, very different to how they will respond, how they will be at night. And up until this point, I've not illuminated my artwork except with UV light.
So the antenna already allows me to sense near infrared and near ultraviolet. So since I think 2012, I've been sensing infrareds and ultraviolets, which are elements that the human eye cannot sense. So from that moment, I felt that we were more or less the same, because you could see things that or sense things that I couldn't see, and then I could sense things that you couldn't sense. And it also allowed me to connect with other species in a stronger way, because many species can sense the infrared or the ultraviolet. So if I saw bees going to a specific flower and I sensed that there was a high level of ultraviolet in that flower, to me it made sense. Or if I saw my cat staring at a wall and I sensed that there was infrared bouncing on the wall, then I understood that the cat was not just staring at the wall, but staring at the infrared. And also sensing electronic devices. Many electronic devices emit infrared light that is invisible, but that I can sense through the antenna. So this also would allow me to create works of art with infrared and ultraviolet that I would be the only one sensing, but or other animals could sense as well, or other cyborgs could sense. And I've just done one. I created an infrared light bulb that was always on, but the people thought that the light bulb was not on. So it's a traditional light bulb, and inside there's an infrared emitter. And then if you have an antenna, you can hear that there's infrared light coming out from the light bulb. But if you don't have an antenna, you think that the light bulb is off. So that's, I think, the only artwork I've done using color light. But yet to me, blue light or a red light makes no, it's as invisible as infrared light or ultraviolet. I mean, I don't see the blue, I just see the light. And in the case of infrared or ultraviolet, then I sense the color. So it's yeah, but then infrared and ultraviolet, I just sense the near infrared and near ultraviolet. There's lots, like color is like this, and then there's lots of infrareds and lots of ultraviolets. And so, and some, I've been naming some ultraviolets because people just say ultraviolet, but there's many different shades of ultraviolet that have no name, or also many shades of infrared that have no name. So I've been naming some of these ultraviolets and infrareds for my own.
Because I actually do have masses of stimuli. You know, I'm not looking for something else to stimulate me or anything. Maybe I'm a bit dull, I don't know. But I sort of find, I mean, it took me a long time to, I have been bored for a long time, but now I'm not.
I think Elon Musk would and other people talk that are focused on technology, talk a lot about AI, artificial intelligence, whereas in my case, I'm not really interested in artificial intelligence. I'm more interested in AS, would be artificial senses. In my case, if the antenna was AI, then the antenna would be telling me the names of colors. That would be AI. But I was not interested in technology giving me intelligence. I wanted technology to open up a new door, a sensory input, and then when you create an artificial sense, it might or it might not become intelligence. It depends. So in my case, it took 3 years to learn colors. It was a slow process because I had to associate the vibration of a color to a specific name that people give to a color. So it was a slow process because it's not intelligence, it's a sense, it's a stimuli. So I'm more interested in technology that can give us new stimuli that our biology cannot sense, and that there's lots of elements, natural elements that human bodies cannot sense, like magnetic north or magnetoception, electroception, ultraviolets, infrareds. There's lots of natural elements that surround us that we cannot sense, and that if we can open our senses and sense them, then we will be able to understand reality in a more deeper way, and also express ourselves through new ways that we've never explored before. So I'm more interested in AS, artificial senses, than AI. I'm not so interested in technology giving us intelligence without us creating it on our own as well.
Don't you think this sort of slightly halt in life that we've had for the last few months has actually made people reevaluate certain aspects of their lives as well? And maybe that whole sort of going on a, you know, whatever, it actually, is that what is valuable, you know? Because actually also, you know, I realize, I think that it's been fascinating about for the arts and things, because there was some poll or something, and the people said artists were the least important in our lives, you know, and it's a bit like, no, actually what it proved to me in this time is we can't just live from cooking, eating and sleeping and not going anywhere and not having anything to do and only watching television or whatever, you know, or whatever there was, that actually we do need all these different, to I don't know, to have a rich life, you have to choose what makes that life for you. And I think this time has made you realize that maybe actually I just want to sit and read a book for the rest of my life.
And I'm still, I think, in shock of being, I don't know, I'm trying to process this situation.
Elvis, look up. I want us all to really, really come together. I feel there's a lot of things separating everybody, and I want people to come together, and I want them to understand their differences, and I want them to work together, and I want us to make a better world than we've got at the moment.
I want us to start listening to our planet more, and to open up our senses more, and to stop sensing things that maybe they've been around us for all our lives, but we've never paid attention to. So I think that's something that we could all start exploring.